Hello, sports fans, and welcome to Let Me Speak, the show that shares sports' biggest headlines explained, uninterrupted, and maybe a little audacious. I'm Joe Braverman, and today's topics we'll be discussing are
the state of the NFL after Week 14 and making picks for Week 15. Plus, where does Steph Curry rank among the all-time greats in the NBA? And how the sports world can work through the latest COVID outbreak. It's episode 52 of Let Me Speak, and it starts right now. What's happening, everybody, here on Thursday, December 16th, 2021, episode 52 of Let Me Speak. Can't believe we're 52 episodes into this, everyone. Thank you for watching us on YouTube. If you're listening to us, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, no matter if you're a new listener or have been listening since the very beginning, can't believe it's gone this far, and we're almost there into 2022, getting on to a whole new slate of this podcast. Hopefully this thing goes above and beyond, but there's so much going on in the sports world. We got to dive right into it and talk right away about the NFL, because playoff time is getting closer and closer, and there's just headlines here, headlines there. Of course, the overnight headline has been Urban Meyer getting the boot in Jacksonville. And honestly, that headline is just like a duh kind of thing. You knew he wasn't going to last there. You know, it was like kicking Josh Lambo was the final straw for that Jaguars organization, saying, you know what, this is just not going to work. And ultimately, you know, you look at guys in the past who have made the transition from college to the NFL. Urban Meyer just couldn't last. He couldn't hang in the NFL. You know, it's different with different situations. He's got Nick Saban going from LSU to then the Dolphins and then back to Alabama. Didn't work in the NFL, clearly working in the college game. You got Pete Carroll, did great at USC, doing even better with the Seahawks right now. Urban Meyer is a lifetime college coach, and he learned in a big way that your style of coaching in college is 10 times different when you get to the NFL. I mean, these are grown men, and you can't use those same college tactics that you were doing against, you know, young adults or young interns and the coaching staff and stuff like that. So honestly, with everything that Urban Meyer has done since he took the reins for the Jaguars, everyone saw this coming. It was almost like delaying the inevitable, but I am kind of surprised that it happened right before Week 15 instead of carrying out the whole year. But who knows if this is the turning point for Jacksonville and that franchise. Just keep in mind for a few names, maybe Josh McDaniels from the Pats, Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs, Byron Leftwich from the Bucs. You know, those are a couple names that might be popping up. So just keep your eyes on that. But we got to get to what's going on the field. And like I said, ahead of Week 15 is where the firing of Urban Meyer made. We've got a special guest picker for our Week 15 slate of games. And let me tell you, it's a fun segment. But before we get into Week 15, let's talk about the previous week, Week 14. And honestly, my impression was that this was the week of large leads almost getting lost. You know, there were multiple games where, you know, it seemed kind of bleak. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's a close game just like that. And really the first one was between Baltimore and Cleveland. Now, I would say this is more about Cleveland than Baltimore, because let's face it, the Ravens, they did lose the game and they lost Lamar Jackson. Luckily, it's just an ankle sprain. They did keep it to 24-22, even though they were down a lot at halftime. But ultimately, just quick notes on the Ravens. They're not a playoff team without Lamar Jackson. They're not. Okay. Jackson is just that much of the focal point of this offense. And even with Jackson, Tyler Huntley at quarterback was able to flash what the offense can do when Jackson isn't the focal point on offense. You look at some of the numbers that they had. Huntley was 27 of 38 for 270 and a touchdown. You saw Devontae Freeman get 64 yards on only 13 carries. That's That's what's got to get better, is not just the passing game, but someone other than Lamar Jackson has to run the ball. Like I said last week, Devontae Freeman, Latavius Murray. I know they have a ton of injuries and they're kind of behind the eight ball in that remark, but it's got to be someone other than the quarterback making all of these plays. You don't want someone throwing it 50 times and running it 20 times. You don't want that. But like I said, this is more about Cleveland to me because they've got bigger problems no matter how much they've survived. And this is taking all the players who are in the COVID protocols out of it. Okay. This was a team that had a 24-6 lead at halftime. Okay. And they were outscored 16-0 in the second half. You look at what that offense did. They totally stalled out in the most crucial part of that game in the fourth quarter. This was the offense that carried them last year, but just looking at some of the numbers, Baker Mayfield was 22 of 32, a $190, 2 touchdowns and a pick. They only had 100 total team rushing yards. Okay. And not only that, but on the other side of the ball, this was a defense that nearly allowed 400 yards to a depleted Baltimore team. So even if Cleveland gets into the playoffs, I don't see them going that far unless they automatically turn on the switch, because the standings right now, they're the first team out in the AFC. But you got to remember that division is tight with them and the Ravens and the Steelers and the Bengals. So it's going to be tight, but I think the problems are more within the Browns, where I can't confidently say that they will get into the playoffs and end the schedule and the regular season on a high note, because an injury depleted Baltimore team nearly came back from down 24 to 6 at halftime and almost came back to beat you. So this was also with Tyler Huntley. It's not Lamar Jackson. So, the Browns should be lucky, very lucky that they got out of that with a win and that they're still alive in the playoffs. But another team that's got to be lucky are the Cowboys. I mean, early on in that game in the nation's capital, they were instilling a ton of confidence into what I think they could have been. I've said for weeks now that when healthy, this Dallas team is a top team. Well, now it seems like they were fully healthy and they get out to a 24-0 lead at halftime. And then what happens in the second half? 20-3, they were outscored in the second half. They did win 27-20, but this Dallas team just can't get out of their own way. I mean, when you look at when it was in the fourth quarter, I think it was like 24-8 or something, you couldn't just play conservative. You could have just handed the ball off to Corey Clement and Ezekiel Elliott and just keep time off the clock. But no, Dak Prescott has to throw a pick six on top of another interception that he had. He only had 211 yards in the game. And with the weapons that they have, this offense should be 10 times better. I mean, you got a bona fide number one in Amari Cooper. You got CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Dalton Schultz is coming alive at the tight end spot. This is a team that should be one of the top offenses in the league, and yet they're only mustering out a handful of drives and not only scoring a field goal in the entire second half, being outscored 20-3. But I mean, last week for Dallas was all about the defense. And let me tell you about Micah Parsons. Whew, that guy is a stud. I mean, not only did this team force 4 turnovers, they sacked both Kyle Allen and Taylor Heineke 5 times. And ultimately, with Micah Parsons leading the way, he had 2 of the sacks. But I think after that game, he has leapfrogged himself into Defensive Player of the Year category. He's the Defensive Rookie of the Year without a shadow of a doubt, unless he gets hurt. And even so, I think no one could touch him on the defensive end for Rookie of the Year. But in terms of Defensive Player of the Year, I mean, you're putting him alongside Myles Garrett, his teammate on Dallas, Trayvon Diggs, J.C. Jackson, T.J. Watt. I mean, this guy could be a finalist. And the last guy to do that was Lawrence freaking Taylor, okay? And he's a Hall of Famer, possibly the best defensive player in NFL history. If he's in that conversation, watch out for this Dallas defense. They could have a really good defense for years to come. But with the here and now, the Cowboys, I think they do have the NFC East wrapped up. I think they have it wrapped up, looking at where they are in the standings and the gap that they have over Washington and Philly. I still think, though, that they're the fifth best team in the NFC right now. I think, not ranking them right now, but when you look at the standings, they're fourth. They're the worst team among the division leaders, but even I think the Rams sitting at the 5 spot in that first wild card spot, I think are better than them right now. So Cowboys, you got to fix yourselves on offense and show everyone what kind of offense you can be. And I think it starts and ends with Dak Prescott being not just making smart decisions, essentially, is for Dak Prescott. No, terrible interceptions like we saw against Washington, finding the open receiver, not gambling and taking chances, being smart while being at the quarterback position. But I mean, they've got their playoff spot, it seems like, wrapped up. Two teams that didn't have it locked up, though, 49ers and Bengals. Maybe the game of the week between those two. Going to overtime in Cincinnati with San Fran winning 26-23. Let me tell you about this San Francisco team. I talked about them as a team to watch for last week, but they are getting hot at the right time. They've won 4 out of their last 5. Even in that loss, they've scored over 20 points. They had a 3-game winning streak at one point where they scored over 30. And like I said, we're learning that George Kittle to Jimmy Garoppolo is essentially that connection that makes the quarterback and the other player 10 times better, like a Rob Gronkowski to Tom Brady, or Jerry Rice to Joe Montana, Michael Irvin to Troy Aikman, all those guys. Because Kittle is a beast right now, okay? In that game alone, 13 catches, 151 yards, and a touchdown. This is coming off last week's game in a loss to Seattle where he caught the ball 9 times, $181, and 2 touchdowns, okay? This offense has the capabilities of being dangerous. You have a healthy Elijah Mitchell. I know he didn't play in the Cincinnati game, but he is going to get healthy. But then you've got receivers like Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, which, by the way, Ayuk, that move to score the touchdown in overtime, wow, play of the week, and maybe of the season for that 49ers team. But when you look at that schedule, too, it's also favorable for what they have. They host the Falcons this week. Then they've got a Thursday night game in Tennessee against the Titans. Then they host the Texans, and they go to the Rams. I think when you look at the standings the way they are right now, they're currently 6, so they're right in the middle. They've got a couple of 6 and 7 teams chasing them right now. But I think among those 4 games, you go 2-2, you clinch your spot. Because I think San Francisco is a team to be reckoned with. Not only the great offense, but as we saw in the Super Bowl year, their defensive line is one of the best. I think this is a San Francisco team that can make the playoffs. I really do think they can. And they can be a dangerous team, maybe put some of those division leaders on upset alert. That's what I think with San Fran. But on the other side of the ball, the Bengals, again, they just seem too young and inconsistent to really trust on a weekly basis. Because, Joe Burrow is great, but he was sacked 5 times, another 5 times. And he's been sacked the most times in the NFL, 41 times, okay? You also have the 2 fumbles by Darius Phillips on special teams. Now, at their fullest potential, Joe Burrow and the offense are great. They're absolutely stacked, nearly 400 yards of offense against the 49ers. Joe Mixon, to me, is a top 10 running back in the league at least. I mean, he's the 2nd leading rusher in the NFL, and he's 3rd in the league in rushing touchdowns. But last Sunday, he just couldn't make the impact. He carried the ball 18 times, but again, the San Fran defensive line was great at stopping the run, only giving him 58 yards. But even in the passing game, you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, CJ Uzama. I think this is a team at their fullest potential is very, very dangerous. But they're just too young. That's it. It's just young and inexperienced. I think this is a team to be reckoned with for next year. And plus, the schedule doesn't even get easier this year. They're at the Broncos, they host the Ravens, they host the Chiefs, and they're at the Browns. So the schedule is not favorable for Cincinnati right now. And the way they stand, they're 9th in the playoff race right now, currently in the 9th spot. So I'm not really expecting Cincinnati to make a ton of noise and get into the playoffs. But who knows? It's like night and day with that Cincinnati team. So we'll have to see what the Bengals do for the rest of the year. But when it comes to next year, they're going to be dangerous, especially with hopefully, an improved offensive line. But a team that is sliding and sliding and sliding are the Bills. I talked about the Bills last week with that Patriots loss and the win, but they just continue to slide. Now they lose in overtime to Tampa Bay, 33-27, excuse me. And this was really on both sides where you could see the flaws. I mean, the Bucs led 24-3 at halftime and then 27-10 with 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, boom, here comes Buffalo. But then they eventually lose in overtime. Now, Tom Brady in the offense looks great. I'm going to keep saying that over and over and over. They've got a ton of weapons right now. I mean, last Sunday, Brady was 31 of 46, 363, 2 touchdowns, maybe the MVP for right now. And you got Leonard Fournette, who's turned into beast mode in the backfield. I mean, 19 carries, $113, a touchdown last Sunday. But I mean, you look at the numbers from the last 3 games for Fournette, he's got 257 yards rushing, 98 yards receiving, and 6 touchdowns, okay? And one player you really might want to keep your eyes on is Rashad Perriman, okay? You remember last year when Antonio Brown got signed later on after his suspension was over, and boom, he comes and makes an impact. Rashad Perriman could be that exact same thing for this Tampa team because all the focus is going on Fournette and Gronkowski and Evans and Godwin. Here comes Perriman where he's now a few weeks into this offense. I know he only caught 1 ball, which was the game-winning touchdown, but he could be that X factor for this Tampa team to see how far they can go. I still got questions defensively for Tampa, considering they blew that lead. They allowed almost 500 yards to this Buffalo team. But to me, they're still a top 3 team in the NFC. I mean, the way it's looking right now, I think the Packers are the best team as of right now. The Cardinals are second, and then the Buccaneers are third. That's the way I see it. And, that could change on a weekly basis. But Tampa is for sure a top 3 team in the NFC. But on the other side, because they have won 4 straight, but Buffalo, man, I don't know what it is, but they just seem hurt mentally. 2 straight weeks of heartbreak. You get the game against New England on Monday night, then you get this one in overtime. You look at where this team was, they were in the top 2 in the AFC. They've been trailing Tennessee for a long time, and all of a sudden now they're 7-6. They're in the 7th and last playoff spot, and here they are losing 3 of 4. And to me, there's one problem with this team. And it's Josh Allen, not necessarily in his style of play, because Allen is still a top quarterback in this league. The problem is Sean McDermott and the game plan is putting too much weight literally on Josh Allen. You saw him in a walking boot, and there's still questions about his availability against Carolina. I mean, he did so much for this Buffalo team last Sunday. He was 36 of 54, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick. He ran the ball 12 times for over 100 yards and a touchdown. You got to keep in mind, in that game, he was the team's leading rusher, okay? He rushed 12 times. You know how much Devin Singletary and Matt Breida ran the ball? 7 times combined. A combined 7 times compared to Josh Allen all by himself for 12. So it's not necessarily Josh Allen making the plays, because we all know that quarterbacks are going to make mistakes from now and then. But it's about the game plan, okay? They need to get a running game going. And I don't care how long it takes. If you continue to stall out, Matt Breida, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, they've all got to be a factor for this Buffalo team, because Josh Allen can't do it by himself. Absolutely not, especially when they've got a tough schedule coming up with their position right now. Obviously, they get Carolina this week, but they got to play New England again. They've got a ton of more schedules. Not only that, but the sprained foot for Josh Allen is not going to help things at all. So Buffalo has got to turn it around fast. And I mean fast. And who knows if that starts this week in week 15. And who knows if people believe that they can win that game against Carolina. But let's see if myself and our guest picker believe that Buffalo can do it, along with a slate of other teams. Ladies and gentlemen, this is NFL Week 15 edition of Pick'em. So it's once again time to make some picks with our NFL Pick'em segment. And as always, we've got a special guest picker this week, another family member, special cousin. He's also a very funny comedian who's got his own podcast, the Marvel-less Miss Maisie podcast. Tim Bridge joins the show. Tim, thanks for taking the time and recording this.
Absolutely, Joe. It's gonna be fun, and I need to let your viewers know that I'm gonna have very little in terms of real game knowledge or anything insightful to say, as I am not a football viewer. But here we go. I've watched, I want to say 1.5 football games over the course of the last year. So
that's enough that we need on here. So before we talk picks, let's talk about your podcast. You and Maisie Loud, the Marvel-less, not Marvelous, Marvel, like the superhero franchise, less Miss Maisie. Now, this is a podcast apparently where you have seen every Marvel movie and Maisie has not.
Yes.
And this is sort of your way of explaining to her exactly what goes on. Explain the podcast for those who don't know.
Well, it's an introduction to my friend Maisie. I'll be honest, I came up with the title before anything because I'm not gonna. That's a clever title. You can't.
It is
say
very clever. Very
clever. You can't
clever.
say it's not clever. She hasn't seen any of the Marvel movies because she's doing this really fun thing where she has her life together and is going to medical school. So. I decided she's absolutely hilarious. She's one of my good friends, and she just hasn't seen any of the movies. So each episode we watch a Marvel movie in release order, the MCU, none of that X-Men or anything like that. But yeah, it's fun, and she gives her perspective as a scientist and as a doctor as to if any of this in any of these movies is medically or scientifically possible. The answer is usually no, but we get into some insights, and it's a lot of fun. It really is just a blast, and a way for me to talk about something that I've spent way too much time, way too much brain space is occupied by Marvel for me to not vomit it out onto someone else.
I mean, Marvel is about as popular now as anything. Obviously, you got the Spider-Man franchise coming out. Obviously, the predecessor would be like, what do you do when Marvel stops making movies? But it sounds like they're just going to keep going with. It
Joe.
Sounds like they're going to keep going with the movies. So,
Joe, I got bad news for people who don't like these movies. You're going to be seeing them for the rest of eternity. It would appear until one of these things bombs, which they don't. They just don't. And I can't. And I'm part of the problem. So,
but a good problem.
I got my Spider-Man tickets already. All right, I'm on board.
You're on the train and you can't hop off. So
exactly, married to the pot.
Yeah. So what was the process like in getting this started? Was this just something that you and Maisie kind of said, like, this sounds like fun, let's give it a shot, or was this something you had been thinking about for a really long time?
Well, like I said, I came up with the title first, and my friend happens to be named Maisie, so it just fits in perfectly. But yeah, I reached out to her. She had expressed an interest in this. She, when you're going through medical school, you need a reprieve, and so this has been a nice little journey. We're about 13, 14 episodes in, and she's a fan of some of the movies and not a fan of some of the other movies.
I think it's great also because you got the diehard Marvel perspective, which is you, and then the outsider perspective, maybe someone like your average Joe, no pun intended, who just see the title and are just kind of going with it. So it's a fun premise. I can tell you, I've listened to a few episodes. It's a lot. Awesome. It's a very fun presence. So let's dive into some picks. And as you said, you're not 100% knowledgeable fan of football, but we're going to make the picks happen. We do
I know some things. I work in a restaurant and ESPN is on the TV at all times, so I get glimpses. I'm not coming from zero perspective here, but
there's some kind of knowledge there.
Exactly.
Before we get into it, the shakeup in the standings, we have a new person in second place. Last week, Nick Devlin goes 11-3. He's sitting in second, still chasing Johnny Mansouritis at 13-3. And the good news for you, Tim, is we've got all teams playing. We've got 16 games to pick from. and there's a chance you could upset Johnny. So you ready to?
I like my chances. All right.
You got 16 chances to get them right. Let's see if you can do it.
Come on.
As we start with the Thursday night game between Kansas City and LA. Chiefs look like they're back, but they're on the road against the team who some are saying started the slide in the Chargers, beating them earlier. But Chiefs 9-4, Chargers 8-5. What do you think between the Thursday night matchup?
I'm liking the Chiefs. I like Patrick Mahomes. He's got a great acting ability in those State Farm commercials. And no, I know that the Chiefs were struggling earlier this year. I think that football, you got to play the streaks. You got to play the teams that are hot, and the Chiefs are looking solid as of late. So I'm going to throw my weight behind Mahomes and the Mahomies down in Kansas City.
All right, I think they're called Mahomies. I think I'd have to get in touch with some people.
If not, trademark. All right, I call it.
You want the Mahomies? I'll give it right to you, and this will be the pod to do it. I agree with you. Kansas City, they're just on a roll right now. Chargers, there's still a lot of questions about them at 8-5. They're still fighting for the playoff spot. I think it's going to be close, and I feel like either team could win, but I'm with you there as we go to Kansas City.
It'll be a good game.
Yes, it'll be a very good game. As now we go to Saturday games, we got a couple Saturday slates starting at 4:30 with the Raiders and the Browns. Vegas at 6-7. They have been sliding since starting 5-2. Meanwhile, Cleveland feels like they've got their whole team in COVID protocols, including their head coach, their quarterback, their star wide receiver. I mean, we don't know if they will be cleared in time for Saturday, but Tim, what do you think with a banged up Browns team hosting the Raiders?
I'm going to say I like the Cleveland Browns. It's hard not to root for teams that for your entire life have been terrible. You like seeing them, a little life in them. And I got a friend who's a big old Cleveland Browns fan. And one of the half games I watched was the Browns narrowly beating the Ravens this past week. Let them come back in the game, 24 points in the first half, 0 in the second. We don't like that kind of momentum, but I heard that Hulu has live sports from Baker Mayfield. Most of my picks are going to come based off of the commercials that these NFL players do.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget the progressive commercial. I mean, Baker Mayfield's got his own home right there in Cleveland.
This man is taking over the airwaves in terms of the breaks between the things we want to watch.
Exactly. I mean, you could also say the same thing about the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders haven't been good for many, many years. They've only made the playoffs like one time throughout both of our lifespan. I do agree with you that, despite all the COVID outbreaks and stuff like that in Cleveland, I think it's not going to be enough for the Raiders. They're kind of spiraling out of control.
Are they in Cleveland?
They are in Cleveland.
Oh, game over. That's Browns all week. That's Browns all day.
Of course. I mean, like we said, the progressive commercials, Baker Mayfield's, it's his home, not his stadium, his home field. It's his home, literally. His home.
And Cleveland, that's a tough town to play in because no one has anything else to do in Cleveland except root for their sports teams.
That's why they're so diehard in all those sports teams. But yeah, I'll agree with you as we go with the Cleveland Browns. And then we go to the nightcap between the hometown Patriots. I should say hometown because you did grow up in Massachusetts, just like me. The Patriots.
That's my team. If I were to have a team, it would be the New England Patriots. Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. They go 9-4 off of the bye week against the Indianapolis Colts at 7-6. They're also off the bye week. Obviously, it's not going to be a windstorm like it was in Buffalo a few weeks ago. Pats are probably going to pass more than 3 times, but
that was crazy. That was
insane game. And you watching the pregame too. If you see like the analysts, they're falling out of their chairs from the wind. That was.
Oh, I saw oh my gosh, I saw clips of Peyton and Eli have like a quarterback version of
Manning broadcasting.
It's like a
secondary broadcast.
And the disappointment that they couldn't talk about passing the ball because that's what they know about.
Yeah.
And B, that the run just kept working. That was wild.
Yeah, it kept working, but New England's probably going to pass it more. It is indoors in Lucas Oil Stadium. This is a big spot for both teams really in playoff standings. Colts out of the picture right now. New England's still at the top. Could win the AFC East if the Bills lose their game. But what do you think between the Pats and the Colts?
I want to root for the Pats. I like Mac Jones is playing well. He's prospective rookie of the year. pretty easily, I think. And I say that as someone who knows zero, could not name another rookie.
It's the rookie of the year that you know.
That I know of, that I've heard of. I think I'm gonna go with the upset. I'm gonna say the Indianapolis Colts are gonna take this game. I think they're coming off a bye week. They're gonna get a little bit too relaxed, and I think that the Patriots this year, as well as they are playing, they have kind of a false champions, false first place vibe where it's almost like they lucked into it. So I'm gonna say they're gonna slip a little here. They'll still be leaders. They're still gonna be a contender, but I'm gonna go with the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, I think, again, it's another one that could go 50-50. Obviously, I'm sort of on the same boat as it's kind of been sort of a flawed schedule. You got teams that aren't healthy, windy conditions like in Buffalo. So this is going to be like a really true test for the Patriots to see how well they match up against some of the team's best. I do still think defense-wise, if this team can force Carson Wentz at quarterback to make a lot of mistakes and don't let Jonathan Taylor, the NFL's leading rusher, go absolutely nuts, they should win this game. That's why I think, I got to root with my Patriots. I got to pick the Patriots to win this one because they're a team with a chip on their shoulder. No one expected them to be 9-4, top of the AFC. So I think they're just going to ride that confidence and go all the way. I think they do drop a game eventually before the playoffs start, but this week I do like Indianapolis. I think they can overpower the Colts over there. Plus, with the history between the Pats and the Colts, Brady and Manning, it's almost like the Patriots always have an upper hand on them.
Start anew. Yes,
it's a new rivalry.
New rivalry.
Jones and Wentz will carry us into the future. As then we go to the Sunday slate of games. Speaking of the aforementioned Bills, they are coming off back-to-back losses to the Pats and to Tom Brady and the Bucs. They travel home to take on Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers, who are 5-8. A lot of questions on both sides of the field, Tim, but between the 5-8 Panthers, 7-6 Bills, what do you think?
I gotta go with the Bills here. I think that Carolina doesn't have it this year, and that's proven by the fact that they signed Cam Newton. So no matter how well he's been playing, which I know nothing. Is he playing well?
He's been benched twice.
Okay, you know what? I like the Bills then. I'm sticking with my instincts. Got to go Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, there was one little instance for Newton when he signed and then he scored 2 touchdowns against Arizona. But even then, that seems like a distant memory right now. Cam Newton's not what he once was. And I think, mentally, this is huge for Buffalo. If they can win, this will sort of get the mentality back on them. Because, I mean, look at the last 2 games. Losing in overtime to Tom Brady and the Bucs, and then in that windstorm on their home field against the Patriots. So mentally, you got to think, where are they? This was a top team in the AFC, and now they're on the last playoff spot, number 7. So I think this is a bounce back game, and I like Buffalo to come up with this one. But it's got to be more than Josh Allen just making plays for them. As we then go to, I would call maybe the easiest matchup to pick, the 10-3 Arizona Cardinals and the 1-11-1 Detroit Lions. They're at Ford Field. They're in Detroit, but Detroit has only won 1 game this year. Arizona, a top 3 team in the NFC at 10-3. Is this one even going to be close between the Cards and the Lions?
I think it's going to be closer than you think, but I think at the same time, the Lions are also a team that have been terrible for the entire time that I've been alive. I mean, just what are you doing up there in Detroit? What is happening? How with all the moves and nothing's latching on? You got to go Arizona here. I will say there's a man on the Lions whose last name is Pinasini, and that makes my heart happy. And I want to root for him. I want to say the Cardinals win, but Pinasini catches the snitch.
Oh, I mean, I didn't even know that. We probably have to double check.
Go ahead.
What exactly?
I know this for a fact. I know nothing about the NFL, but I know there is a man named Pinasini on the Detroit Lions.
Well, just what kind of position he plays? Is he a running back or a wide receiver?
I couldn't tell you. I want to say defensive tackle, but maybe a forced fumble or an interception right there by Pinasini. So I like his chances.
Yeah, he's got a good chance, but the Lions don't. Arizona.
I root for him. Get out of Detroit, Penisini. Get out of there.
Get on a more exposed team like the Packers.
A more exposed team for Penisini? I don't know about that, Joe.
I did not plan that. That was not intentional. This is an easy one. Arizona at 10-3, coming off a tough loss at home against the LA Rams, but this is a team that off of the loss, they're better road team. If you look record wise, they're undefeated on the road. They're only like 500 at home. So they play better on the road. Plus it's Detroit 1-11-1 should show you the record right there. It's going to be a blowout between the Cardinals and the Lions. Arizona wins that one. As then we go to the AFC East, a little nice matchup here. The 3-10 Jets, the 6-7 Dolphins, Miami also coming off a bye. They started 1-7. I should say they started 1-0, winning against the Pats. Then they lost 7 straight, and now they've won 5 straight. And here they are at home against the Jets, who, again, another team has been all over the place for our lifetime. This is an at-home matchup here in the AFC East. What do you think between the Jets and the Dolphins?
I like the Dolphins. You got, like I said earlier, you got to go with the streaky teams. You got to go with the hot streak teams. I like a team that goes that goes losing all the time and winning all the time and coming right in at 500. I think that's way more exciting of a season for a Miami fan than going 1-1, 2-2, 3-3. Go with a hot hand, and also I don't like the Jets. I don't like the way the Jets look right now. They're a bad team. So this seems almost as easy as the last one. Jets are going to lose. Bet on the Jets to lose. If you want to make easy money, bet on the Jets to lose.
That is a safe bet. I know people in a lot of like suicide pools might be thinking Dolphins. Again, the Jets are a total mess. They've had a bunch of different quarterbacks. Zach Wilson at quarterback is getting better, but they just don't have the weapons that Miami does. Tua Tagovailoa is playing so much better at quarterback than he was earlier in the year. And plus, they've just got a ton of weapons. Defense is coming alive. I like Miami in this game, and that's going to make that AFC tighter and tighter with them getting to 7-7 after this win. As then we go from the AFC East to the NFC East. Cowboys and Giants. Dallas 9-4, just barely holding on last week against Washington. Here come the dismal Giants. Daniel Jones not going to play. We know it's still going to be Mike Glennon, but regardless, do the Cowboys beat the Giants at MetLife?
This is my upset of the week, Joe. Gotta go with the New York Giants here. Cowboys are floundering according to the ESPN screen that I saw at work the other day. They're just not playing. Dak Prescott is not the way that he has been promised just as of late. So I'm going to say that the New York Football Giants are going to be coming through with the upset victory.
Ooh, that's a big upset, and I kind of like going on the limb for that upset, just because Dallas, with I talked about it in our previous segment, but with all the weapons that they have, you'd think they'd be better, but inconsistency has been the problem. I mean, what were they up 24-0 at one point last week, and they won by 7? Having Washington recover the onside kick, Prescott throwing a pick 6. I mean, it's legible, but I don't think it's enough, especially with the Giants team all out of sorts. And Dallas should win this game. They should win this game.
They won't, Joe. I'm telling you right now.
All right, I'm going to put a little asterisk saying upset of the week, and if he gets it, we'll see what happens.
I get 3 extra points if I get that one. All right, that's what I'm negotiating this.
All right, we'll put it on the table. We'll discuss for the future. We stay in the NFC East though and talk Washington and Philadelphia. The football team at 6-7, still as of right now in a wild card spot. Currently the 6th spot. Meanwhile, the Eagles are knocking on the door. One of many teams who are 6-7. This could ultimately decide if another team from the NFC East gets into the playoffs. It will probably either be Washington or Philadelphia. But what do you think between the battle of the 6 and 7s? I
can't not root for the best named team in all of sports, the Washington football team. I know nothing about either of these teams. I don't know what. I couldn't, if you gun to my head, I could not name a single player on either of these squads, but I have so much admiration for for this being the second year in a row that they just did not choose a name for their team. I wish every team in every city in every sport would follow suit. Cleveland Indians shouldn't have changed to the Guardians. They should be the Cleveland baseball team for 2 years. I can't not root for Washington here. I'm going to go with I think the football team is going to win.
That's sounding like a real true expert right there. The football team will win that one. And
the football team will win.
And what's funny is that the football team is actually a finalist for the team that Washington might be going with. They got all these mascot names, but they might be going with the football team for the rest of
I don't want them to pick a mascot. I don't want them to. There's nothing you can come up with that is better and more descriptive and more esoterically terrifying. You want to scare the fans? Make them think that their team isn't a football team.
I mean, Eagles versus a football team. I'll take the football team all
Taking
day.
the football team. Pull those birds out of the sky.
I think in this matchup, though, I think the Eagles, with the offense they have and the bye week they had, I think it's a nice refresher for them at home at the Link. You know, it's going to come down to if Washington can stop Jalen Hurts in that Eagles offense. They're looking better and better each week, and these are big playoff implications on the line. I do think at home the Eagles should take this one, but I wouldn't be surprised. Again, another matchup, I wouldn't be surprised either way if the football team or the Eagles come out with the win. But for this week, I will go with the Eagles on this one.
That's those tied record teams. These are the hardest ones to pick.
Exactly. And speaking of ties, we got the 6-6-1, that one being the tie. Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Tennessee Titans 9-4. Tennessee, another team coming off of a bye. They're currently sitting in second in the AFC right now. So they basically got to keep winning to even have a chance to vie for that first round bye. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh's just fighting for their life to get into the playoffs. They're sitting at 6-6-1. Ben Roethlisberger, all reports are saying this is his swan song season. He's going to retire after this year. So does Big Ben and the Steelers keep it going at home against Tennessee?
I feel like in order for something to be a swan song, it needs to be good. So I don't know if this is. I think you could just describe this as his last season. A swan song would be like, I won the Super Bowl, and that is not going to happen, and they're not going to win this week. I'm taking the Titans.
Yeah, swan song being, this is a first ballot Hall of Famer, 2-time Super Bowl.
Sure,
but
all right.
Just going on past success. That's all it is. All it is past success. But again, Big Ben doesn't look like the Big Ben of old. Tennessee, they are banged up, but this Steelers team is a good defense, and I think they can shut down Ryan Tannehill and that offense with how banged up they are. Again, we're still waiting for Derrick Henry. He probably won't be ready until the playoffs. A.J. Brown's still on IR. Julio Jones isn't the same guy. So I ultimately think the upset here is going to be Pittsburgh. I think at home, the Steelers, they, like I said a couple of weeks ago, in the mindset of the Steelers, they're going all in for Ben Roethlisberger to get him at least to the playoffs. I agree with you. They're not going to win the Super Bowl. They're by and far not the best team in the AFC. But I think they've got a mindset of let's get to the playoffs. Let's get to the playoffs. And I think Pittsburgh comes out with the win. I think this is going to be an upset right there. 6-6-1 goes to 7-6-1.
Is this your upset of the week that will get you 3 more points if you get it correct? As we have previously established, is the rule.
I mean, I don't get any points, for what kind of picks, but I'll put it on the table for myself. I might
stuff. Give yourself some points, Joe.
Yeah, why not? Why not? We go from an exciting game to probably the worst game of the week. 2-11 versus 2-11. Houston and Jacksonville. Yeah, that expression says it right there. That's not going to be a good. We can make short time on this, but all I can say is Urban Meyer still looks like a mess at head coach in Jacksonville. Is that going to be enough, though, for Houston to overpower? What do you think between Texans and Jaguars?
Yeah, gotta say Jacksonville, once again, another team that has been so bad as long as I've been alive. How many number 1 picks does it take to get you to more than 2 wins a season? I'm going to go with Houston on this one, just based on, I think the Jags are just they're messed up. They're messy. It's messy in Jacksonville, and I don't like their chances.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the reports too, all throughout the year with Urban Meyer, not getting on the team, playing after a loss. You've got apparently he called his assistant coaches losers. He's fighting to have their young running back not on the field and instead have his old college player. I mean, it's a mess right now in Jacksonville. I'd be surprised if Urban Meyer makes it a year.
To be fair to Urban Meyer, 2-11, technically, they're losers. They're losers. Are they winners? They're not winners. They're playing in Jacksonville.
Well, I mean, I guess it's, if he said, I'm a loser just like all of you, then it makes sense. But
that would be a little self-aware there, Urban. Come on.
Yeah. I agree with you. Houston, easy win right there. Jacksonville.
Give me rural Myers next time. Okay, thank you. That was a good night.
Suburban Myers.
Suburban Myers.
But maybe that'll be the next coach for next year for Jacksonville. As then we go
help. They'll still lose. Spoiler alert for next year, Jacksonville Jaguar fans. You're still gonna lose,
even if they have the number one pick. Even if they have that pick. We now go to Cincinnati and Denver. This is going to be a much better game. Both teams at 7-6 on the cusp of the playoffs. Cincy with a heartbreaker last week in overtime to San Francisco. Meanwhile, Denver 7-6. Again, this is a team started 3-0. Their kind of wheels are falling off a little bit, but they're still in the hunt. This is one of those games, Tim, again, where whoever wins has the best shot of getting into the playoffs and the other team feels like they might be eliminated. What do you think between Bengals and Broncos?
Is this in Cincinnati or is this in Denver?
This will be at Mile High in Denver, Colorado.
All right, then in that case, I got to go with Denver. It's getting to be that time of year where the teams that are playing in the colder areas are going to have advantage, an extra home court advantage thing going on. And Mile High especially, the air up there, Joe, it's thinner. Doesn't work out. And you got to be ready for it. Altitude. You got to be ready for it. I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos here. Cincinnati, once again, a team that just really struggles to get right above the cusp. And I got to go with the prestige team that's got a little bit more historical chutzpah to get the win.
That's a good word right there, chutzpah, especially with the phlegm in there. You are right on the money about Cincinnati, is that they're always on the cusp, but they could just never get over the top. Same thing here. This is just a very young Cincinnati team, a little inexperienced when it's coming down to this home stretch. Joe Burrow's only in his second year. They've got a ton of weapons, as I mentioned in our previous segment, but I think Denver, they've got Teddy Bridgewater. He's probably as accurate as any other quarterback. I do like this team. Again, another 50-50, but I think Cincinnati on the road is going to take this one because it's almost like night and day with the Bengals. One week they're good. They're beating, the Chargers, Chiefs, all those teams. And then they're losing to teams like the Jets. I mean, it's so night and day. I think this is the night portion of the Bengals.
Oh, I just picked a team that lost to the Jets. I just picked them to win a game.
No, earlier in the year.
But that's so sad. That's so sad.
Well, the Jets have three. The Jets have 3 wins, though. Tennessee is one of the other wins. Tennessee is the other wins, and you picked them to beat Pittsburgh.
What am I doing?
They're set in stone. No changing. No changing. So I think for me, Cincinnati is going to win this game. It'll be the night portion. They'll look good in this one. As then we go to Atlanta, San Francisco. San Fran 7-6. Again, another team fighting for those wild card spots in a tough NFC West, but they're still holding on. Meanwhile, I got the Falcons, who basically have been awful since the Super Bowl game. Matt Ryan's
demoralizing.
Demoralizing. But they're still 6-7 though. There's somewhere in their mind they're saying we got a shot at the playoffs. They've probably got to get a win on the road in San Francisco to make that happen. So what do you think between the Falcons and the 49ers?
I'm going to go with the 49ers here. I like when the 49ers are good from just like an aesthetic standpoint. So I'm rooting for them for that reason. Again, gun to my head, couldn't tell you a single person.
Jimmy G. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy Garoppolo? Oh, yeah. Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gotta root for Jimmy Garoppolo.
He's still the quarterback. He's
still going. He's still trucking. Oh,
and yet they picked a quarterback at number 3, Trey Lance, but Lance is sitting on the bench. Jimmy G.
You gotta be ready. You gotta be ready for when Jimmy G's gonna hang.
He's still only like 30. He's still got plenty of years left.
Hey man, it's football. They get smacked in the head a lot. You don't know how long you're gonna have a guy. With his head on his shoulders. I gotta go with San Fran here. because I just learned that Jimmy Garoppolo's on the team.
Now you're certain in that pick.
Now I'm a San Francisco fan. All right.
I agree with you. I agree with you. The Niners should win this game. They've got a great offense going like we saw last week. They've got a ton of weapons. And defensively, I think they can shut down Atlanta. Atlanta's just all over the place. They can't stop San Fran defensively. They can't score offensively. It's just going to be an overmatch. I expect a blowout by San Francisco. A big blowout, maybe a 2-touchdown win at least.
Maybe Atlanta goes up 28-3.
Little reverse psychology there.
Yeah.
We'll see. As we stick in the NFC West and go with the Seahawks and the Rams. Rams coming off a big win Monday night in Arizona. They're now 9-4, still 5th though in the NFC standings, chasing the Cardinals. Meanwhile, Seattle, they did get the win last week, but they're still 5-8, still an uphill battle to get to the playoffs. What do you think between the Seahawks and the Rams?
I'm upset number 2. I'm going with the Seahawks here. Russell Wilson's a streaky player. You know, he'll play crappy. He's been mostly crappy this year, but I will say that he's got just that talent to pull it out in a game, and I think he's gonna rise to the occasion here and beat a Rams team that. It's a little cocky right now, I bet. It's a little good. Yeah,
not only that, they got a bunch of guys on the COVID list, including Odell Beckham Jr., Jalen Ramsey, Tyler Higbee was on there. It's not a bad pick to pick Seattle, but I just think, as you said, Wilson's streaky. The offense is great when they show up, with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I just think for LA, their defense is finally coming around, and Matt Stafford is he's getting his mojo back from earlier in the year. He was making a lot of mistakes during the Rams losing streak and their losing ways. I think LA pulls it out. There's still a possibility all these players could still play. We don't know about vaccination status, but if they can get cleared before Sunday, they'll be able to play. But I think regardless, the Rams should win this one, but it's going to be close. I think it comes down to the final possession between those two teams, who wins it. As then we go, maybe game of the week, I'd say here, 10-3 Green Bay, 8-5 Baltimore. We're still awaiting to find out if Lamar Jackson is going to play at quarterback, but otherwise the Ravens are 8-5. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers continues to roll. Packers over the Bears last week in a big win. What do you think between the Packers and the Ravens? Does Aaron Rodgers get it done again?
I think Aaron Rodgers gets it done again. I think the Ravens are a little out of sorts right now. And when you lose your quarterback, I mean, that's it. Honestly, it's a rarity for a backup guy to really come through the way that you would want them to. There's a reason they're the backup. But as someone who watched the Ravens last week, yes. Expert over here. As someone who watched the Ravens last week when they didn't have Lamar Jackson, rough looking team, rough looking offense.
They did almost come back with Tyler Huntley.
They did almost come back, but it's I don't see them greasing the wheels, and I think Aaron Rodgers is just too hot this year. Let's hope his holistically healed COVID toe doesn't cause any issues.
Well, I would have thought you'd pick Green Bay for seeing all the State Farm commercials with that long flow of hair that Rodgers had. I've
fallen apart from that. Maybe when he was on Jeopardy, that was a time where I wanted to root for him. I almost want to not root for him so that he can get the Jeopardy job, because I thought he did a pretty good job on Jeopardy.
He was pretty good.
Yeah, he did all right. And then he revealed that he's not a smart guy. So maybe he shouldn't have that job. I got to go with the Green Bay Packers.
Hey, he's smart enough to be the Packers quarterback. It's been Brett Favre and then him. So he's doing something right. But I agree. As you said, this Baltimore team is just injuries, not only at running back, but at cornerback. Defensively, they're all over the place. They can make it a game regardless. But I think, I put it like this. If Lamar Jackson is in the game, they lose by maybe a touchdown. If he's not in the game, they lose by 3 touchdowns. Let's put it like that. That's just how good Green Bay is right now. They are number 1 in the NFC after Arizona lost. So I do like Green Bay to get this one done in Baltimore against the Ravens. As then we go to the Sunday night game, NFC South matchup, New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Bucks. Tampa had 10-3 overtime win against Buffalo last week. Meanwhile, the Saints just sputtering out of control, but they did beat the Jets last week with the return of Alvin Kamara. So what do you think with Tom Brady and the Bucs? Do they get it done at home against the team that beat them twice last year in the regular season?
I think it's an easy win for Tom Brady and the Bucs. I think that it's hard to not bet on Tom Brady statistically over the course of the last 20 years. So, yeah, I think he's going to get it done. He's basically the prospective MVP this year, or at least like leading that race. And he's a tremendously old man doing that. So I think this is an easy win for the Bucs. Saints just don't have it this year. They're streaky, as you say. So I gotta go with Tom Brady. Gotta go with Tom Brady.
The ageless wonder.
The ageless wonder. The wonder how he has aged.
How does a guy who's 44 look like that? I think is a good question for Tom Brady.
A lot of diet, exercise, probably being phenomenally wealthy doesn't hurt.
I definitely agree. This comes down to if Taysom Hill for New Orleans can avoid the mistakes. I think having Kamara back gave him that sort of sense of comfort. That's why you saw the Jets' performance so well for New Orleans. But, if that offense can't produce, then it's over, because we're seeing Tom Brady and that Tampa offense at its peak right now with Gronkowski at tight end, with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, all the weapons that they have. Fournette is running like a freaking beast for Tampa Bay. So I think Tampa should win this game. But we've seen in the past, New Orleans is Tom Brady's kryptonite since he's been in Tampa. In the regular season, so far, he's 0-3 against the Saints while part of Tampa Bay. But they did beat him in the playoffs. I think that streak comes to an end. It's going to be closer than people think, but Tampa should win this game over New Orleans. As then the last game we got here is the Monday night slate, as always, Minnesota and Chicago. Vikings at 6-7, Bears at 4-9. Bears kept it competitive with Green Bay last week, but just ultimately couldn't pull off the victory. Meanwhile, the Vikings were able to bounce back on Thursday night against the Steelers after allowing Detroit to win their only game of the year. What do you think between Minnesota and Chicago on Monday night?
I think I'm going to go with Minnesota on this one. They got purple uniforms, which I like a lot. The Bears historically are... historically meaning as long as I've been alive. Not really, but because they used to be the big old Bears, and now here they are. I think Minnesota's colder than Chicago. Well, actually,
it'll be in Chicago though.
Be in Chicago. Yeah, gotta go with Minnesota based on, like I said, literally nothing. I like their purple uniforms.
Right, they're called the Purple People Eaters.
Hey, and they're gonna eat people who are bears. There you go.
That's our resident expert, Tim Bridge, making some picks. I agree with you. I think Chicago's just all over the place. They're just waiting for the end of the year so they can fire their coach, and they're just all over the place. But I think Minnesota does pull out the win. I think they're a good team, but they just have a hard time showing up on a week-to-week basis. This week, they do show up, and they win against Chicago. So there we have it, our picks for NFL Week 15. Tim, thanks for taking the time. For those that want to catch out your podcast, tell them where they can find it, maybe where they can find you on social media. I know you got some upcoming comedy events coming up, so just let the people know what is going on in your life.
Sure. You could listen to The Marvelous Miss Maisie on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, or on Podbean directly if you want to go direct to the source. Yeah, you can follow me on social media. I'm usually, I think I'm at Tim Bridge across the board, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Joe. This was really great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So that does it. Tim Bridge, thanks again for joining the pod, and good luck on your picks for NFL Week 15.
I like my chances. New leader right here.
Again, a special thanks to Tim Bridge for joining the show. A lot of fun. Definitely a lot of fun. And you can see why he's a comedian. Very funny takes right there. We'll see how he does in his picks. But shifting from the NFL, we go to the NBA. And of course, not only the NBA landscape, but most of the sports world has been talking about Stephen Curry for last Tuesday night becoming the new 3-point king at Madison Square Garden. Now, in examining the situation in itself, it was kind of ironic to me, at least, that it was at Madison Square Garden and against the New York Knicks, because if you remember in the 2009 draft, Steph Curry was sitting there at number 7 for the Golden State Warriors. You know who was right after them? The Knicks. And what happens when David Stern announces that Steph Curry's the pick for Golden State Warriors? A rain of boos comes crashing in because the Knicks knew about him. They knew about Stephen Curry and how much he might have turned that Knicks franchise around. But if it couldn't have been in Oakland, it had to be in New York City. It made the most sense, not only for that, but if you remember in 2013, Curry became a household name after his 54-point night, his 11 of 13 shooting from 3 back in 2013. I mean, if it wasn't in Oakland, it had to be at Madison Square Garden, where he made himself a superstar in this NBA. It was off after that night in 2013, 8 years ago, and he just didn't look back at all. Now, in talking about the career of Curry, because let's be honest, he is the greatest shooter of all time. He's better than Reggie. He's better than Ray Allen. But the numbers that he has throughout his career are insane, absolutely insane. You know how many straight games he's gone with at least one three-pointer made? 152. You know who's second? Lou Dort from Oklahoma City with 41. Think about that. 152 is in first place. Second place is 41 straight games with at least one three-pointer made. And you also have to look at the attempts, okay? He's got 2977 for three-pointers made. He's attempted over 6,900 of them. That percentage is 43% from 3 for his career. And this dude came in the league in 2009. So over the course of 11 or 12 seasons, he's made 43% of his three-pointers. That's insane. And not only that, what's even more insane is the amount of games he did this all in. He broke the record in 789 games that he's played. That's over 500 less games than both Ray Allen and Reggie Miller. So he's done this in the fewest amount of time. And what's funny about it is these numbers could even be amplified by the time Curry decides to hang up the sneakers, is because he's going to be 34 in March. You'd think he has at least 3 or 4 more prime years left in his career for Golden State. So I kind of agree with what Charles Barkley was saying on that night, is that this is a record that might not ever be broken. I don't think it's ever going to be broken because he's at 29-77 right now. Okay. And you have to look that over 500 less games, that's an equivalent, if you're doing the math, 82 in a season plus a few playoff games here and there. That's about 5 years worth that he got it in. Okay. That means Ray Allen and Reggie Miller would have to basically shoot all near perfection over the next 5 seasons if Curry were to hang it up right now. So this number is going to be amplified. It could even get to 4,000 at one point if his career, if it comes to an end. Okay. It could get to 4,000. And I think this is one of those records that's not going to get broken, at least not for a very, very long time. You got to remember, it was 10 years ago Ray Allen broke Reggie Miller's record. And then here comes Curry to break Ray Allen's record. But he's still, like I said, I think he's got maybe 3 or 4 more years left in the prime of his career. So there's still plenty of time for these numbers to go over the moon right now for the way things are going. Now, in terms of his all-time status, because that's what the teaser was about, I think he's at least top 10 greatest of all time in the NBA. Because you got to remember, this is a guy who revolutionized the game. Okay. He's like Babe Ruth, Magic Johnson, Wayne Gretzky, all these guys who made others change their style of play. The NBA has become a 3-point shooting league where if you're not shooting the three ball, most likely you're not going to have a sustained career in the NBA. And that's what this guy, Stephen Curry, did. Now, I don't put him in the list of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron, Larry Bird. It's different for a guy like Reggie Miller or a guy like Ray Allen, where all you know is that they can shoot. They can shoot three-pointers. But if you look back on all the incredible plays that Curry has, he's got handles. He can finish at the rim. Is he a stout defender? Probably not. But he's more than just a guy who can shoot the three ball. Okay, that's his trademark, is the range and the shooting. That's his trademark right there. But you look back, he's a point guard with handles. He can finish at the rim. He's acrobatics from time and again. So that's why I'm sort of in the back half of greatest of all time. Maybe in like the 8, 9, 10 kind of range like that for Steph Curry, because he's definitely there. He's a game revolutionizer. That's all it is. That's what helps his case. And the fact that he's not just a shooter is that he's got handles. He's got range. He can finish at the rim. That's, to me, what gives him sort of the edge over a Reggie Miller or Ray Allen or any of these other great shooters of the past. So Steph Curry is in my top 10 of all time for the NBA. And it's just incredible to watch this guy, because he went to Davidson. You think of all the big time schools. Michael Jordan went to UNC. Magic went to Michigan State. Larry Bird went to Indiana. All these big time schools, and Steph goes to Davidson, which is like a lower D1, high D2, and all of a sudden he's turned into the greatest shooter of all time. So I salute and congratulate Stephen Curry of the Golden State Warriors for becoming the new 3-point king in the NBA. Now, of course, the big headline in the entire sports world has been the resurgence of COVID-19 cases. I mean, we got the presence of Omicron right now. Reports are saying it's a lot more active. It's more transmissive. Cases are mild, thank goodness, not just in the sports world, but the entire world for this new variant. But we're seeing the COVID lists for the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL just continue to rise and rise and rise. I mean, you've got so many teams going through outbreaks right now. The Cleveland Browns, the LA Rams, the Boston Bruins, the Chicago Bulls, Detroit Lions, Washington football team, Calgary Flames, and that's just a few of them dealing with personal outbreaks within their team and within their organization. Now, in the NHL, they've got more than 24 players placed in the COVID protocols over the last 2 days, including Calgary, who has 19 team members in protocols. And then you've got other teams like the Browns, or in the NFL, where you've got over 100 players who have tested positive since Monday alone, including Washington, who's got 18 total players in protocols. Now, the good news that we're hearing from the NFL is that most of these cases are asymptomatic. Now, I'm not a scientist or any kind of health expert, so I'm not really, a number one expert right here to talk about it. But my guess is that, much like everyone who probably got the vaccine shot earlier in the year, that immunity is probably waning because of the 6 months sort of thing. And booster shots are probably going to be needed for the protection. And we're learning from the NFL that they have until December 27th, on top tier people like, coaching staff, organization, stuff like that, to get a booster shot. But, this is something that in the sports world that we've seen over the past year and a half that they can work through. There are going to be these little glitches and speed bumps here and now. And we've seen teams go through it. We've seen NHL postpone some games. We've seen the NBA postpone some games. In the NFL, some teams are going virtual on their practices. So this is something that is something that they've gone through for over the past year. So it's not like they don't have any experience and are consulting health experts. What do we do? What do we do? You know, are they taking enhanced steps? You know, we're hearing about a couple NFL teams going into higher tiers in terms of protocols and stuff like that. But in terms of how you handle this, you know, I just have a couple suggestions. You know, number one is the booster shot, obviously. And I'm not one to criticize if you don't want any kind of shot or not. If you give me a really stupid reason for not getting a shot, that's when I criticize, you know, saying like, you know, oh, I don't want to, it goes against my religion or something like that. But I'm not one to judge because it is personal preference. So I'm not one to judge if no one wants to get a shot at all. But boosters are probably number one according to science. Number two, I think you got to bring the masks back in. You know, you look on sidelines and stuff like that. Maybe not, you know, with the NHL because it's so like, you know, one in, one out, maybe masks don't need to be there. But, you know, for NBA, if you're not on the sidelines or not on the bench, for the NFL, you should probably put them on. But this is just an outbreak. You know, it's another outbreak. You know, we saw this at the beginning of the MLB season in 2020. We saw in August just this last year, the Yankees, the Red Sox, they went through this. So we've seen teams in the past have these kind of outbreaks and have been able to deal with it without these sort of vaccine sort of scientific things that they've been able to work with. You know, the good news is that the out is the vaccine. And all you gotta do is just boom, get the vaccine, you're done right then and there. But again, I don't judge. So we've seen the sports world handle this before. We're seeing Canada go back to a 50% capacity for all their games up in Ontario. You know, I think that's like Toronto and other places like that. So we're seeing how they're managing it. And, you know, obviously this variant is different from like Delta or the initial COVID variant that we saw. So it could be totally different. And again, I'm not a scientific or a health expert, but those are just some of the steps that I see the sports world should really maybe pay attention to or revisit to try and quell this thing. Because we've seen in 2020 that a world without sports is a very scary world. So hopefully the sports world can manage this outbreak and we can continue to see some great action in the world of sports. Up next, it's our usual segment, Let's Get Local. Let's talk about some of those Boston teams. And of course, the headline has to be about the Patriots now coming off a bye, playing an extremely crucial game on Saturday night. It's funny, I said that a couple of weeks ago about the Bills game. Then we say it about the Tennessee game. You know, every single game is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. This one, to me, is the biggest test that they've had since their winning streak, you know, since they've won 7 straight. Because not only are you fighting for a playoff spot, but you've got the AFC East possibly on the line. You've got one of the top seeds in the AFC. You're still going for that bye because as of right now, even with being on a bye week, you're still number one in the AFC, but things are just getting tighter and tighter with Tennessee and Kansas City both at 9-4. And I think in this game, a win against Indianapolis will not just shore up that playoff spot, but I think it gives the Patriots a greater shot at winning the AFC East because not only, even if both Buffalo and New England win, you know, that sets you up for next week where all you got to do is beat Buffalo and you win the division. And then you go into the week after that, you win that one, you know, regardless of that or Buffalo loss, you win. So this win would put New England really in the driver's seat for winning that AFC East title. But like I said, to me, this is probably the biggest challenge that they face because let's be honest, in the past 7 games that they've won, they've beaten the Bills in a windstorm, the Titans, who are not at their highest peak, you know, no Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, etc. They've beaten a lot of subpar teams. I mean, really, you could argue that the Chargers win was the most legitimate. They're not all of the wins are impressive. Don't get me wrong. They're totally impressive. But in terms of challenges, this is going to be the biggest one right here because you've got a great Indianapolis team. You're inside. The weather's not going to be a factor at all. And this is a very dangerous Colts team. And the way the Colts are, this is one of those matchups where Bill Belichick and the coaching staff have to make the quarterback win the game, like we saw in the Tennessee game, making Ryan Tannehill beat you, or in the Cleveland game, making Baker Mayfield beat you. This is a game where you have to shut down the run. And it's not going to be easy because you have the NFL's leading rusher, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, you look at the numbers since the Colts started 1-4, he's gone for over 100 yards in 6 of the last 8 games. So it starts right there on that defensive line with Christian Barmore, with Devon Gottschall, with Matt Judon. They've got to control the line of scrimmage and control Taylor, control Hines, everyone on that running game. They've got to shut it down and really make Carson Wentz try and win the game, because there's really not a standout receiving option. I don't think the Pats wouldn't be able to lock up when you look at the pass catching options that Wentz has with Michael Pittman, T.Y. Hilton, Zach Pascal, Jack Doyle. I don't see anyone that is really a game changer, not like, a Stephon Diggs or a George Kittle or someone like that, because I trust this defense for New England to be able to force some mistakes for Carson Wentz, because we've seen when Wentz is in trouble, he can make the mistakes. But we're seeing this year, compared to the Philly years, that Wentz is not a game changer, that when he's on his 2 feet, he's just got to manage the game for whoever he's playing with, whether it's Philadelphia or Indianapolis. But I think this is a defense that can force some mistakes from Carson Wentz. I really do think they can, because regardless of whoever they've played, this is a top defense in the league. Maybe I put them top 5, top 10 at least, because you have great secondary help with J.C. Jackson. Jalen Mills is playing much better than people thought. At the safety position, Kyle Duggar, Adrian Phillips, and obviously Devin McCourty. You've got great linebackers with Hightower, Van Noy, Collins. And then, like I said about that defensive line, pass rushing with Matt Judon. That was a name I forgot to mention in Defensive Player of the Year when talking about Micah Parsons. Matt Judon is in that category. But I think defensively, this is a team that can force a lot of mistakes from Indianapolis. This is a team, they are going to be game managers, Indianapolis, because they are one of the top teams in terms of not only takeaways, but giveaways. So this is a team I don't think is going to try to force the mistakes so much, but I think the defense might be able to lull them into that. Now, on the other side of the ball for their offense, they're definitely not going to throw the ball only 3 times. I think they're going to let Mac Jones throw it a lot more times than just 3. Obviously, the conditions played a big factor in Buffalo. But similar to Carson Wentz, Mac Jones just has to limit the mistakes too, because this is one of the top defenses in terms of takeaways. They actually are the top defense in takeaways at 29. And so everyone on offense has to have a safe-like mentality with that football. That means that ball goes nowhere. Harris, Stevenson, Bolden, they've got to hold on to it. The receivers, the minute they catch the ball, it's 2 hands, once you see tacklers coming on. So they've got to hold on to the ball. And it's just going to be between the Colts and the Pats, who makes the least amount of mistakes. That's really all it's going to come down to. And do I feel confident that the Patriots can win this game? I do. I do feel confident, but this is basically the last hurdle, for at least for me, to say, okay, this team can be a force in the playoffs. They can be legit, and they can make some noise regardless of what happens. This is, to me, the last hurdle. Once they get over this, then I'm jumping on the bandwagon to say, you know what, this New England team can do some damage in the playoffs. And we'll see what happens on Saturday night if they can go into the horseshoe and beat the team that it seems like for years they've always had a number on. I was listening to the radio. They said that the Colts haven't won since 2010. Of course, that infamous 4th down play with Kevin Falk, that was the last time the Colts beat them, and that was with Peyton Manning. So, maybe it's not a rivalry, but we know that these two teams do have some history. So it'll be very fun to see what happens between New England and Indy on Saturday night. But of course, we got to get to the court now and talk about the Celtics. I mean, they are like night and day so far here at 14-14. I mean, from the last time we spoke, you see this team get embarrassed by Phoenix, but then turn in an impressive outing against Milwaukee. So takeaways from that is that it's good to see Jaylen Brown back in action. They are being very, very cautious with that hamstring injury, considering Brown has had a history of hamstring injuries, missing multiple games. The thing is, though, you can't be that conservative, though, if you're still like on the fringe at 14-14. And as of right now, you're in the 10th spot in the playoffs or something like that. If you're getting into that mid-pack mentality and get to 5 or 6, like I said, was realistic, then you can be conservative. But the fact is, you're only at 500 right now. And we saw against Milwaukee that he is the difference maker, since he is probably the second best player on the Celtics team. I mean, 19 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, and 30 minutes of action are good. But of course, it starts and ends with Jason Tatum. I think his struggles are far behind him now. I mean, he's averaged 26 points per game in the month of December. And I think whatever he had at the beginning of the year, where he's only scoring like 15 or whatever, I think those are gone. Those are long gone. I think overall, though, the problem that this Celtics team has is effort. It's an effort problem that they need to fix. I mean, you see these teams showing up they're just not showing up after struggling in previous games. We're talking about a consistent 48 minutes for this team. Limiting the turnovers and the low percentage shots has to be what the Celtics have to fix, because we're seeing it right now. They're not up there with Brooklyn or Chicago, not with those top teams in the Eastern Conference right now, not with Milwaukee, but it's on a consistent basis. You want to see effort like in the Milwaukee game every single night. And, part of that comes with, the shooting struggles. Dennis Schroeder isn't going to have a great night. Al Horford might not have a great night, but it's about, game planning and stuff like that. And maybe you get the young guys in, you give Nesmith more time, Pritchard more time. Obviously, we're seeing Grant Williams have a huge impact off the bench. But it's an effort thing from the Celtics team. And I think it starts with Tatum, and then it trickles down to Brown and Smart, because I think Brown doesn't have a problem with effort on a consistent basis. I think it's Smart. I think it's Tatum. Those two guys have to show the consistent effort, for a whole 48 minutes or however long they're on the field, 35 or 38 minutes each night. So it comes down to that, just effort. If you're not showing any effort every single night, then you're going to continue to hover around 500, and you're going to continue to show up for the elite teams like the Milwaukee's or the Clippers for, a good portion of the game. And then you're going to lose to some struggling teams like, the struggling teams like you have upcoming. Obviously, the Warriors aren't a struggling team. Absolutely not. But what I'm looking at this Friday is at least an effort. Are they going to keep it close with Golden State is going to be the biggest question for me with the Celtics team. If they can keep it close, if they can keep it competitive, then you can still have that glimmer of hope. But if you see them the very next game or against teams that are struggling, like, New Orleans or Houston or, any teams like that, if they continue to struggle against those teams, then there's time to panic. Then it's panic mode for this Celtics team. But 14-14, it could be a whole hell of a lot worse with this Celtics team. But a team that probably couldn't get worse are the Bruins, because not only do they continue to struggle at 14-9-2, I believe is the record, they've got a COVID outbreak they're going after. And it's not only that, but your 2 top point scorers are now out for at least 10 days. Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, Craig Smith, all in the protocols. Now, when I first sort of heard this and kind of thought about it, it could be possibly a blessing in disguise for Bruce Cassidy and this coaching staff, because you're forcing guys like Taylor Hall and Charlie Coyle. You're probably going to see them step up to the first line. But then you see guys who have struggled to perform this year, like Pasternak and McAvoy, and even DeBrusque, who continues to ask for a trade. They'll get more ice time and perform like everyone knows they can. You see guys like Foligno and Howla, they're going to get more ice time. So for Cassidy, it's kind of maybe instilling, maybe this is a wake-up call to Pasternak and Hall to say, hey, you're one of our top players on this team. Let's see you perform like it, because they have been leaning on Marchand and Bergeron this entire season so far. So now it's time for someone else to be the goal scorer, to rack up the points. It's that time. This is the time to do it. And looking at the schedule, it's not the worst time to lose some key players. Obviously, a 10-day isolation would make all these guys miss at the Islanders, at the Canadiens, at the Senators, home versus the Hurricanes, and home versus the Avalanche. Okay, now the Hurricanes and the Avalanche probably are the toughest games right then and there. Those other threes, they can be winnable. Those are all teams that are struggling at this moment. So it's not the worst time to see all these guys go out and sort of just game plan to see what guys work best. Because if you're seeing guys like Foligno and Howla, if they're performing better, then you can trust them to be on the second or the third line, because we're seeing the problem for the Bruins is just depth. Outside of the perfection line, there's really no one else that has stepped up for this Bruins team and has racked up the points as much as Marchand and Bergeron have. But with them out, it'll be a real test for the Bruins to see what they can do without their top two scorers. And it'll be a real test in the entire city of Boston to see if they can continue the success. Lastly, as always, it's our LOL moment of the week. Now, this is for not only the sports buffs, but all the movie buffs out there, as a brand new movie trailer just came out, and it's about a sports biopic. But the trailer, not 100% convincing for most people. So I'm not sure exactly who I'm giving this to. I don't think I can give it to any of the actors for portraying it. So I kind of came to this conclusion that this week's LOL moment of the week goes to Netflix. So I only give it to Netflix for the fact that they are producing and releasing this movie. So the movie is called Home Team, and it's about New Orleans Saints coach Sean Payton and how he spent his suspension for Bountygate in New Orleans in 2013. Now, the true story is that Sean Payton spent the suspension coaching his son's sixth grade football team. And eventually, they turned it around. At least that's what I'm assuming. But Sean Payton's being portrayed by Kevin James. Okay. Now, I personally like Kevin James. I don't think he's terrible. But I think in terms of portrayal, a comedic actor like Kevin James portraying someone maybe as hard-nosed or as serious as Sean Payton. And then when you look at the trailer, just some of it doesn't seem that, realistic, even though reports are coming out that Payton read and reviewed the script before they filmed in April. So I don't know. I'm not 100% bought in to this movie. First off, I didn't even know that the movie was being made. I didn't know it had to be made because, when you have a situation as serious as Bountygate, you have players getting bounties over hurting people. I don't think people want to know, oh, what did you do while you were suspended? And boom, it's a comedy. I'm not fully bought in. And, maybe I got a couple movie buffs out there, so maybe they can lend their hands and their expertise into this. But I don't see a lot of success coming with this movie. I like Kevin James, but it's like you got Taylor Lautner as the head coach. Some of the scenes were just they were unrealistic. I don't think the team could have been that bad, or because it eventually, the trailer shows that the football team is basically incompetent, and then once Sean Payton becomes an offensive coordinator, they all of a sudden turn it around. Now, unless someone can argue with me on this, I'm not sure that Sean Payton himself can turn around a team where, according to the trailer, they look that bad. And, you have a kid jumping out of the way on defense or, stuff like that. I feel like for Sean Payton, I think this was more about, maybe the connection between him and his son getting back onto the same field. But even then, it's not 100%. I'm probably not going to see this. And even if I were, it would just be to see how bad it was. I'm not sold on this movie. And I know I've got a bunch of movie buffs, like I said, a couple of friends who will probably give me the expertise on this one if they feel the same way, or maybe it's just me. But just the way things looked in the trailer, not 100% sold on this being a biopic. And, will it be a comedy? Yes, it's listed under a comedy, but in terms of, maybe moving movies, I don't see it. I mean, the movie starts with an assistant not knowing who Roger Goodell is on the phone.